And so what we're doing is we're trying to find a patterns, actually. And one of the things about that particular drawing was it did have some very regular patterns that we just kept repeating. Those patterns, the patterns of refinement, the patterns of elaboration. And so if we take 4 different types of stories and we take them 2 at a time, we come up with 3 natural backlogs. 3 natural copies of the same pattern. And that's the next thing I want to offer you. This notion of the continuity of flow, this reconception of what does it mean to analyze, what does it mean to plan, the fact that the same vocabulary that we use down here inside of a team when we're doing iteration planning is the same vocabulary we use at a higher level when we're doing release planning. We talk about stories, we talk about actionable, we talk about decks of cards being backlogs, we talk about prioritizing these things. We use the exact same vocabulary as we go up each level. As I go up to the product line level, as I go up to the product level and then the product line level, as I go up to the customer level, go up to the divisional strategic planning level. One of the things that you can do with this vocabulary, this agile vocabulary of story cards, it's interesting, is that you can actually build continuity of planning vocabulary. Does this make any sense? Do you see that there's some power in this? Because right now that's what we don't have. If we come back to one of the most fundamental divides that we have, I mentioned at the beginning that one of the goals of Enterprise Agile, one of its side goals, one of its hopes, one of its aspirations is to heal the breach between the business and IT. And one of the things that has been emblematic of that particular breach is the fact that the vocabulary we use is completely different. Planning at all these different levels they're all completely separate disciplines with all completely separate vocabularies, completely discrete, disjoint, which is the reason why we have this notion that just leave me alone, I'll do my work, and then I'll throw it over the wall, and then you can do your work. The discontinuity is a symptom of the dysfunction. Trying to find a vocabulary that can allow some continuity, some similarity all the way across is an incredibly important thing for enterprise agility, business agility. Does that make some sense? So that is one of the biggest pieces that I want to go over today. Now I've got one more thing to show you. One more slide, then I'll take your question. I'll be happy to. Because I want to make this case. You could say, you might very well think with justice and say, that's really pretty. That's, it's elegant, it's simple. It'll never work. It'll never work in the real world. So the one thing before I take your question is I want to put this next slide and say, yes, it will. That is the hierarchy of backlogs for Alcatel-Lucent and for their product line structure. It takes those 3 fundamental different kinds and makes for product backlogs, which contain goal stories and feature stories. For them, they require 4 different kinds of product backlogs in a specific flow relationship. They have customer-facing backlogs, where each of their major customers has a specific set of features and goals that they need in order to support their business, as well as divisional strategic planning backlogs at the goal feature level. Those then flow into product line backlogs and individual product backlogs, and there's a complex flow relationship, but a specific flow relationship among those strategic planning backlogs, which then flow down into release backlogs. Release backlogs contain features and functions, refined one more level down, and they have normal release backlogs, but they also have subsystem backlogs because their systems are so complex that they're doing concurrent engineering on those, but they also have release configuration backlogs because when they release a solution, it's usually an amalgam of about 15 different products in specific configurations, and they can't release any one thing. They have to release all 15. And so there's a release configuration backlog which has a set of stories unto itself, and it flows on down. And that really is the glory of what we're talking about. Because from those simple concepts as building blocks, I can build a realistic, truly realistic planning hierarchy that has continuity all the way from the highest levels of the organization and strategic planning all the way to the lowest levels of application from this, since it is actually a queuing network, you can actually do real analysis of it. You can actually bring to bear the lean techniques for how you actually do optimization in networks, flow networks. Now you actually have a fine, a concrete basis for doing that, and we can talk about governance. And I'm sorry to delay you.
The previous diagram you showed, my concern about that, and I can see the logic in that, I can see the strength in it, but my concern about that is that one of the strengths of Agile is that you get an idea for what you're going to do, and then you don't define everything in detail before you start.
Correct.
You get going with just your epics really, and a few of the beginnings of the stories.
Yeah.
That diagram, I think it'd be very hard to get people to stop thinking, oh yes, everything's got to get estimates, everything's got to be done at the bottom level on the right, to be able to work out what
Oh, actually, I was good with everything you said until that very last piece. Because actually, I believe that you can do estimation at almost any one of these levels. All right, it's just slightly different techniques at each one of those levels.
Okay.
Now, your point is well taken. This, just because I had to manage some of the complexity of the diagram to try to convey my base point, much like the comment that was made about the feedbacks. All right. It's always going to be the case that you may actually have a direct level of elaboration from an epic level to an epic level, and you may deal with fuzzy things. What I'm trying to represent here, and so I accept that, you're quite right. People will deal with fuzzy things and they'll refine it down. What I'm trying to point out here is that they do eventually have to be grounded in something actionable. They do eventually have to be traceable through those concrete things so that I can go backwards in here. There will be feedbacks, as was pointed out. All right, so yes, you're right. The diagram is a little too simple to represent all those dynamics, but I will agree with what you're saying. That doesn't negate the basic points here. We do need to talk about actionable. We do need to have the continuity. We need to have the same core vocabulary. We do eventually need to get it grounded. We do need the notion of traceability backwards. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm violently agreeing with you. Would you like to follow up? Did I miss your point?
Well, I'm just worried that the business is going to think they have to define everything down to the bottom level before
No,
they
they
start
don't. As a matter of fact, that's part of the thank you.
whether it's achievable and
Right.
what's going to cost.
Thank you. And that's actually the point, is that they don't. They work within their sphere. They work within this particular sphere, and your point has to do with estimable more than anything else. Is that I do really believe that there are techniques that we've developed in the Agile community, techniques of relative estimation and the ways of grounding it, which actually allows you to estimate at this level. And then later refine it and refine the estimate at this level. Yeah, in the Agile community, we talk oftentimes about low fidelity, no fidelity, low fidelity, and high fidelity estimates. There's a large literature on estimation and estimation accuracy and the notion of refinement of estimates in here. I can estimate this level, but I also understand that that's a no fidelity estimate that has a quantitative definition, which means that the variance is 2.0. And it's a 2.0 multiplier. I'm off by 200%. But if I know that variance and I allow some contingency, I can actually give you, good 90th percentile confidence interval estimates, it's just that they're a little wide. I have techniques at this level of functions that, moving from this level, which is no fidelity estimates plus or minus 200%, down to this level, I can get down to low fidelity estimates, which have a precise definition. They're plus or minus 50% in variance. And so I can give you a 90% confidence interval, and it'll be much narrower, but it won't be 1 point. But I know, if I know exactly what the variance is, and there's good mathematics, there's 25 years of research on estimating behavior. Most people don't understand that. We have studied estimating as a human behavior and understood its accuracy. We know, we just don't apply most of the time. Am I partially addressing your question or your objection? It actually is a good point. My purpose here is to allow the business people to work in their context. And the missing link, you're quite right, is the estimating discipline at this level. And then to refine and work in this context, and not to have to get it all the way down here before it's grabbed. No fidelity, low fidelity, high fidelity, specific definitions of those preempt.